Hello everyone, it's Aidan from Push Square. It's Monday and that means it's time for your weekly episodic review of HBO's The Last of Us. This time for episode 3 entitled Long Long Time. Now I'm just going to say this will be a spoiler review as the past few have been as well. I like to get into the specifics in these videos, so if you're looking for something a little less spoilery, head over to the Push Square website where I have my spoiler free written review and you'll find a link to that down in the description. But let's go on to this episode, which I have to say, it's one of the best TV episodes I have seen in a long time. I was skeptical, not based on what I knew of the episode, but based on the critical reception, previews and the like. I have a tendency sometimes to be very hyperbolic, very over-exaggerant. You know, we're talking about the best episode ever made. There's a lot of that going around and I always sort of get my heckles up a little bit and go, well, is it though? Is it? So that was kind of my thought process going into this. I'm not in the camp of it being the best hour of television we've ever seen, but it is certainly up there. The quality is so high and consistent in this episode. It kind of blew me away as well, how they've changed things, how it affected me emotionally. I will admit, Monday morning, bawling my eyes out in my living room. So to briefly talk about the beginning, we have a handful of scenes with Joel and Ellie, which is very subtly played, I felt. You've got a big death hanging over the two of them, with Tess obviously from the Boston QZ. I think there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of resentment between the two characters, but there's also this realization that they're going to have to kind of team up now because Ellie was gravitating towards Tess, Joel was just kind of there, but now it's just the two of them. And the scenes that we got, both with Pascal and Ramsey, they were played really well and I thoroughly enjoyed these scenes. And I liked seeing a little bit of that fatherly affection coming out with Joel trying to stop Ellie from seeing the mass grave. I like the progression. It's slow and steady, it's believable, and it makes me want to see more when we get into those proper emotional beats with these two characters. But the meat of this episode, let's get into it. Bill and Frank. We cut to 2003, the reveal that we all knew was coming, that Bill is a doomsday prepper, he is a survivalist. His town is shuttled off to the QZs with the majority of them being murdered, and he is left to do his thing with this entire empty town. He's setting traps, putting up fences. To start off, I was kind of like, yes, this is nice, we're going to see how Bill became that Bill that we know from the game. That especially was my thought when we first are introduced to Frank. From the game, Frank is obviously a character that isn't alive or really featured much. We find Frank's corpse in the game because the two of them had been partners. We know that the two of them are gay and they are together in the game, but it's quite in the background. It's not like a big thing so much until we find Frank's body. Bill's very upset about it, but it was a very horribly sad ending for the two of them. So when we saw this character, I was like, oh no, here we go, this is going to be rough. And it was kind of rougher than I thought it was going to be. We're spanning the years with the two of them really growing as a couple. The performances from both Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett as Bill and Frank were just fantastic. Especially Murray Bartlett, I must say, he really impressed me. Nick Offerman is a nice surprise to see in these roles. If you haven't seen Devs, please watch that, he is brilliant in it. But of course, a lot of us know him from Parks and Rec, from the comedy roles, but now we have something very super serious, and the way that it was played, the subtlety, the emotionality, it was brilliant. I liked that we got to see the scenes with Joel and Tess, bringing Tess back, Anna Torv. She was there for too short a time, so it's nice to see her in these little segments, and sort of seeing how the relationship between the smugglers and Bill and Frank started. But as we progress towards the end, and this is when we have the biggest deviation from the game so far, and that is that Frank basically just gets sick and he is done with the suffering. So he asks Bill if he'll give him a bunch of pills so that he can just drink them all in his wine and then go to sleep. And of course that leads to a whole very emotional speech about giving him one last good day, and that's when it hit me. They use this song, and is it The Nature of Daylight? Let's see. On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. Very emotional song. It's been used in a couple of films. It was used really perfectly here. And when it came to that final dinner, that final day, I was a mess. Honestly, I was a mess. And even still, I was kind of thinking, Bill's gonna live. Bill's not gonna. But then in the back of my head, I was like, no, well, if I didn't know anything about this, I'd think Bill was going to die with him, and eventually he does. It hits very, very hard, and of course, complete deviation from what happens in the game because Bill is still alive. But ultimately, I gotta say, I think what we had here, change-wise, I think it worked really well. It was nice to sort of have a sad but happy ending. It's a happy ending and, you know, within the world of The Last of Us, even though it is ultimately a sad thing. When you boil it down to the point of this show, you know, why are we watching this as fans of the game? I love that we're not getting shot for shot recreations of what we saw before. This to me is supposed to be an expansion, not a repeat. I don't want to see that. If I want to see that, I'll just play the game, you know? For me, that aspect I did like. I was, of course, a little sad not to see Bill and Ellie in live action, to see Joel and Ellie sneaking through Bill's town. But I think ultimately, again, to go into that expansion, getting that over what we already had, I think it worked so much better. It was super emotional. The performances were perfect. The pacing was immaculate. And I don't really know how to, like, I'm struggling to find the words. Like, it impacted me this episode. I really don't think I'm going to forget about it for quite a long time. And to me, it was the showcase of, like, this show can stand on its own 2 feet. We are now in the territory of, yeah, like, The Last of Us TV show will be its own thing and the game will be its own thing. It's not just, oh, The Last of Us TV show was a nice little remake of this game. It's going to be its own thing. There's now going to be purpose to rewatch and play both of these mediums, and I love it. I love it for that. So let me know what you think of this episode down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching these videos. I enjoy just sitting and chatting about them. Obviously, I'm a big fan of The Last of Us. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. That does help us out. And if you would like to see more of The Last of Us coverage or anything else within the world of PlayStation, why not subscribe to us here on Push Square? Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.